Welcome to the NonProfit Voice, a podcast series brought to you by NonProfit Pro, the go-to resource for nonprofit management and strategy. In each episode, we're going to sit down with leaders of nonprofit organizations, the people responsible for paving the way for our sector, along with key technology strategy partners who are transforming our industry. Here at the NonProfit Voice, we'll have refreshing conversations in which we will all learn more about the convergence of nonprofit and technology. Be sure to follow us on social media and visit our website to find more episodes of the NonProfit Voice. And you can download all of the NonProfit Voice episodes on iTunes, Google Play, or Spotify. We will have all the links down below. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the NonProfit Voice. I'm Nhu Te, Editor-in-Chief of NonProfit Pro, and as always, I'll be your host for today's episode. It's week 6, I think, of social distancing, and I really can't believe it's been that long already, but I feel good, and I'm doing okay. And I hope everyone else is doing well and you guys are staying safe and healthy during these times. So tell me, what hobbies or what new hobbies have you picked up since being home? For me, it's really been, organizing things around the house, giving my plant babies a little bit of extra love and care, and of course, spending a lot of time with my sweet baby Mo. He's 12 now. He's a 12-year-old Yorkie with a lot of spunk. And I'm sure you've seen him make cameos in the NPP Trending Now videos, which I don't mind at all. He just wants to be near me, so I think that's really sweet. So I'm excited to be back on the NonProfit Voice. I feel like it's been a long time, but I guess it's only been 2 weeks. This episode in particular is very special because NonProfit Pro recently released our 3rd annual 2020 Nonprofit Leadership Impact Study that we did in partnership with Neon One. And I wanted to dive into some themes we found in the study. I'll be sure to link the study below, and you can download your copy to learn more about NonProfit Pro's leadership trends for 2020. So with that said, let's get on with the show and meet our outstanding guests. So everyone, please join me in welcoming Mike Elliott, Director of Email Emerging Markets for the Humane Society of the U.S., and Tim Sarrantonio, Director of Strategic Partnerships for Neon One. Hey guys, thanks for hopping on the phone with me. How are you both doing?
Thanks, Nhu. Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Trying to adjust to everything that's happening.
Yeah. My kids are kind of melting their brains watching some TV right now. So I think for the next hour we should be good. But it depends on the day. I will be honest about that. They're young, and there's a lot of things that we're not built for. Working full time, 2 parents, with young kids, old kids, everybody's adjusting, of course. So it's yeah.
Yeah, I don't have kids, but that seems to be the narrative of everybody who are parents. I've heard that a lot. So if they do come in, we'll have them join the podcast. It's no big deal. All right. So thank you again for joining us. So before we dive into today's topic, I wanted to get to know you guys and introduce you to our audience. So Mike, can you share your background and tell us how you got into the nonprofit sector?
Absolutely. Again, my name is Mike Elliott. I'm the Director of Email and Emerging Markets for the Humane Society of the United States. I've been with HSUS for about 2 years, but raising money online for nonprofits for almost 20 years now. My background, it started off, there's a local firm here in town that's a nonprofit intermediary. And I started working as just like a web developer and thought, hey, it's pretty cool. Got to deal with some really neat clients and started to realize I had a real calling for helping people, especially around technology and strategy. And I found out relatively quickly I was relatively good at it. So I worked for this nonprofit intermediary for a bunch of years and then moved on to a direct mail agency, but worked on the digital side. So I have this weird background of, there's a lot of direct mail knowledge, but I always was the digital guy. So I did that for a number of years. I moved to another big agency and worked for a whole bunch of years there, and thought, I love having all of these clients. Hundreds of clients are great, but I just want to focus on one single thing. So I thought back about all these clients, all these different verticals, all the things that I loved. And it turned out, I realized that animal welfare really spoke to me. So I actively went out looking for an animal welfare organization and found HSUS, like a little over 2 years ago.
I love that. I love HSUS. The stuff you guys are doing over there is absolutely incredible. So it's like awesome that you found yourself at such a big animal welfare organization and something you're so passionate about.
Oh yeah, really lucky.
And Tim, let's hear about you.
And absolutely, I do have to say, Mike, I love your organization, and I love the shade of engagement that you're the direct mail guy with the crossover into digital. So you have a really unique insight in terms of what's effective in the space, because a lot of people only swim in one lane.
Oh yeah.
And we all know, and especially more than others, that type of dual engagement is going to have the better retention rates as well. So really cool. Didn't know that. So my background, I'm Tim Sarrantonio of Neon One. I had a little bit of a weird path to where I'm sitting here today. Originally, I was going to be a labor professor. So a labor history professor, basically. I was going to be a labor historian, and I was on path for my PhD, and then I got saddled with a lot of debt and a bunch of rejection letters. And so I did what any good academic would do, which is work in a coffee shop for a bit. So I was living in Chicago and just trying to figure out what I want to do. And I knew that I loved looking at, because the type of labor history that I would look at is kind of the ground up people, grassroots movements, and people just having their own agency, their own power, making changes in their own communities. And so that spoke to me. And then I just started looking around jobs and stumbled into Chicago has a pretty robust set of resources for the nonprofit industry. So there's Forefront. There's a bunch of different job boards and things of that nature. So I found a job as a grant writer, and that was my first job in the nonprofit space. And it was a really great time to be doing that, 2008. So it was weird, in all honesty, because I basically got my start in crisis fundraising. And all our grants got cut. So I had to make I got hired as a grant writer and immediately made a pivot. One of the more overused words right now, but I had to do it, into individual fundraising. And then from there, I just kind of fell in love with being a fundraiser and worked for a few organizations until working for one of the largest Catholic schools in Chicago. I ran their annual fund, raised them, a few $1 million just through direct mail. Established their first online giving platform, because I knew the importance of digital as well. And then just kind of got a little bored of the ability to quickly receive a $10,000 check without not having to do much other than change the copy slightly, because I knew that's what you had to do. So I actually had the opposite of what Mike experienced. I wanted to help more organizations than just the one focus. So we're almost mirror in our paths in a way. And so I came to what was the company before Neon One, and then have just been with them since 2011, and have loved just diving into the technology and the effectiveness and the data and all the different things. So it's a pleasure to be on the podcast, Nhu. So thanks for having me and pairing me up with Mike.
Yeah, of course. I'm really excited to talk to you guys today. And Tim, even though that was a very windy road,
yeah,
I feel like that's very common for a lot of people who do find themselves in nonprofit. Before I got into the space, I was the managing editor for an orthopedics magazine. So, but I love it so much. I'm continuing to learn so much about nonprofits and effective fundraising and how to, be a star leader and lead your organization down a successful path and, achieve the mission at the same time. And it's been really cool.
And I think that touches on the fact that a lot of folks, because of that path, don't necessarily, it's not that they can't read best practices, but they're kind of potentially, they come into the space thinking that it's going to be, well, my job is to do good, right? And the reality is that that's the outcome of what you're supposed to be doing, but the input that you're supposed to be putting in on a daily basis is like focusing on data and good copy and storytelling. And they're not prepared for that. They think it's just, if anything, the allure of the industry is on the program side. And then on the development side, they're not prepared for sometimes the reality of what that actually means. So there's a lot of folks who are just trying to figure it out as they go along, and especially in this environment. So, so leadership giving a lot more kind of direct guidance on this is what it means to be a good fundraiser for our organization, and as well as the broader industry. We need more of that. We need more of that.
And this is perfect because I wanted to get you and Mike on the phone to, we just released the leadership study, and it's amazing, and I'm gonna provide a link in the description. But I wanted to talk a little more in depth about strategic planning and like the important role that technology plays in having an effective fundraising strategy. So just to dive in here, our research show that over half of nonprofits aren't strategizing their fundraising or donor engagement initiatives. Tim, I'd love for you to talk about the benefits of proper strategic fundraising. And, if you can, share some interesting and innovative strategies that you've learned along the way.
I think one of the most important things an organization can do, especially looking at the research that you've put into it, the research that organizations that we work with, like National Council of Nonprofits, Fundraising Effectiveness Project, Giving Institute, is that the drumbeat is that there's generally a retention problem across the industry. And so, especially for new donor engagement, so I imagine Mike is going to have some great insight in terms of acquisition of new different types of donors, but it's also important to have a plan on what you do to keep those people coming back. And it ultimately comes down to every single organization needs to ask themselves, especially now because we're at an identity crisis in our current situation, we need to think about, if our organization stopped existing, what would be the impact in our community? And if you can answer that effectively in a quick 1 sentence, 2 sentence, that is your starting point for strategizing your engagement. Why do we exist? And then from there, you start to unpack that and go, okay, what are the ways that we actually engage people? How do we engage them? What is our story? Are we telling a story about ourselves, or are we telling a story where the donor is the hero in this? One little thing that from a very tactical standpoint, that was just serendipitous today, I happened to stumble upon this old basic timeline of engagement that I wrote up 10 years ago. And it was really interesting to see how applicable it is today, with probably just a few tweaks for more focus on digital engagement. But at the end of the day, it was like, on a daily basis, what am I doing for data hygiene? What am I doing for communication? What am I doing for financial reconciliation, for proper impact reporting? And then it just kind of built on top of that on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, a when I can get to it basis, and then on an annual basis. And I think people need to break out their day-to-day in easy to digest chunks, especially now because we're in this weird haze. But just kind of stepping back and going, what is essential to properly tell our story? Is a good start.
Yeah. I love what you said about taking a step back and asking ourselves, what would our community be missing if we didn't exist? I think that's such an easy way to provide, a base for a strategy, and saying, these are the things that we need to do to better engage our donors and tell them why we matter. I think that's perfect, Tim. Mike, I'm not sure. Do you have anything to add? I know HLS does a lot of donor engagement stuff, and you do a really good job at engaging your audience. I subscribe to your newsletters, and they're wonderful.
I appreciate that. We really try to focus on, I think it'll be kind of a trend here is we're trying to focus on what is our value proposition. What is that thing that you do better than anyone else? And you can apply that to anything that you do, really, especially in this world of, nonprofits. What is it that you do better than everyone else? Why do you need to be around? Like Tim was saying, what would happen if you were no longer there? And so we try to tell that story of these are things that we're doing. We're able to do this because of the way that you help us, you being the person who donated to us. And so we're constantly thinking about that story of, okay, this is great. HSUS saves, thousands of lives, does all this stuff, touches all of these animals and people and brings communities up and makes them better. But how does that donor plug into the story, and how do we want to make them feel? Because it's all about feeling, right? There was that big study, the face of need, and it came out of that study where, you have to be in an emotional state of mind to give. And the more, hard facts and numbers that you're talking about, people stop giving because they get wrapped up in it. So it's all about emotion. So we really focus on how do we make you feel based on the stuff that you've enabled us to do. Without you, the donor, we won't be able to keep our lights on and do X. And that's the kind of key to our success and engagement.
Yeah, that's great. Really putting them in an active role so they can see themselves as in the driver's seat for the organization. That's really great. So, once nonprofits have a strategy in place, it's all about execution, right? And I know many nonprofits struggle with having insufficient resources on hand, whether that's money or time or people. What are some creative strategies for nonprofits to leverage that they already have on hand? Tim?
Well, one of the things that I hope they have on hand is a good donor database to manage all this. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have accurate data, it's been shown that lack of personalization when you're doing your appeals, either digitally or through a direct mail engagement, is going to hurt. Or to put it more positively, when you personalize things, people are more likely to respond, and that's just a larger market element. And so, especially if you're lacking resources, doing things that I think one of the easiest things that you can do is apply the creative mind to even simple elements like what your copy is. What imagery are you using? Does that imagery match your mission, right? It would be the type of thing that if Mike's team started focusing more on just the people as opposed to the people and the pets, right? People don't care about the pet owner in this case unless they want to feel that they're the ones living that when they look at the animal, right? And so it really comes down to how you're applying the existing multimedia elements at your disposal. So cameras on your phone are pretty good right now, so going around and, when possible, taking pictures that relate to your mission that are not stock photos, that's an easy thing that you can start to leverage. There's easy downloadable templates that you can find anywhere for media releases if it involves children, for instance. So having good policies and procedures to back this type of stuff up is going to save you a lot of time. But probably one of the most interesting things that you can leverage is more video content, especially given the phone. I think that's something that we're going to see more and more of. And the quicker that nonprofits master the basics of that storytelling, of that ability to also extend this out for your supporters to actually do their own video content and tell their story on why they're excited about the organization, those two combined, I think, are going to be important, because ultimately video imagery is one of the best ways that an organization can tell its story. But you also want to empower your supporters to do that, because it cuts down on your staff overhead in a realistic way as well. If you get others who can champion you doing DIY fundraising, peer-to-peer fundraising, that type of stuff, it's really going to help as well.
Yeah, and they don't have to be super long videos. I really love seeing donor videos of what they're doing to help their favorite organization and why it matters so much to them. Those are really touching to me.
Absolutely.
That's a really great idea.
Testimonials too. We have a client who just recently told us that during some of the downtime that they have because of coronavirus, it's a sports and athleticism and youth organization. So they're just doing like Zoom meetings to record testimonials on the impact that the organizations had on their lives. And you can kind of get a bunch of these knocked out real quick. People have the downtime to be able to schedule this. So this is a perfect time to do those video testimonials through something like Zoom, and it's organic and it's authentic too. That's the other piece there. That's what's so beautiful about this.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I'm sure they wouldn't mind because they want to, socialize because they're at home right now, and nonprofits taking the time out just to spend time with them is going to mean a lot to them. Mike, do you have any creative strategies that you do at HSUS?
I think Tim really hit the nail on the head with video. We have a full video department at HSUS who does an incredible job with really capturing these stories that you want to tell. But with we have a sister organization, HSI, Humane Society International, and what they do is they really, it's the international aspect, international arm of HSUS, and one of their focuses are closing down dog meat farms, farms that just farm dogs to eat. And one of the most successful videos that they've ever put out, and it's on YouTube if someone wanted to look at it, is one of the young ladies who works for HSI, who's, I think she's one of the social media folks, just filming herself with her iPhone, walking through a dog meat farm for the very first time. You can imagine the kind of emotion that she had. She's crying on camera. It's that kind of shaky video, phone footage that for sure this is real, this is authentic. It's not some unionized, video, outfit with multiple cameras and angles and sharp cuts and edits, but just one woman looking at what is just an incredibly terrible place and just talking about it. And that just blew like all the numbers out of the water. You talk about data, we're looking at those kinds of view counts and how long people are watching and how much it's shared. And it's just free. I mean, besides she had to get to, South Korea, obviously that's not free, but it's just her on a phone filming. And this day and age now where we're relatively stuck in our own homes, we call on our donors and supporters to do that kind of thing as well. Share your time, share your quarantine, stories, show us your animals. We love that. And HSUS loves that. And when you have people using this, doing user-generated content, it builds a community. Right. So it's not just one person showing, hey, this is my dog here asleep while I try to work on my couch. It's thousands of people. And what that does, it builds that community of I'm not just one single HSUS supporter in this case, but, there's a bunch of us. Yeah. And that really works out long term. So when you start, when you get into the point of asking people for money, when they make that decision, no, I'm not going to help HSUS. No, I'm not going to help this organization. They also know they're letting down their community because they've seen their community. They've seen their neighbor, their virtual neighbor with the dog on the couch. So that really helps with the strategy of the ask long term. And this is all based on, very little resources, just telling a good story and enabling your supporters to do that work for you.
Yeah, and the best part about those videos is that they're just so raw and there's just so much emotion behind it. The videos that you guys produce they're really captivating, and I always get a little emotional every time I see the videos of the abandoned dogs, and it's really sad because I personally I love dogs. I'm a dog person. I'm not a big cat person, but when it comes to dogs and I see them in like a terrible situation, I just I really feel for them. So those videos that you do really captivate your audience, at least for me. Where I am on the verge of crying because I'm like, I want to do whatever I can to help these poor animals because they deserve better than that.
So Nhu, is it if you see the cat video, do you just are like, I'm not?
Yeah, it's like terrible. So I see the
really?
cat.
Oh man. I see. I'm a cat person, so I'm down with that. So send them to me then. Send those to me.
I'm not okay. So let me just backtrack here. I don't want to sound like a terrible person. So the cat videos, they still get me. They're cute. Like, they're fine. I'm also very allergic to cats. So every time I'm in contact with them, I'm basically dying.
Well, and that's I think that's the key here, though. Is no, it's an important point. I mean, I'm making a joke, but behind it is an actual element, which is that comes down to people identify with a lot of times I think nonprofits, the problem that they have when they start to structure their messaging, when they start to think about how they're reaching out to people, is that they treat people like a monolithic donor. Oh, you're a donor. And it's like, no, everybody's an individual that's going to engage with your message in a different way. And you're never going to be able to have one monolithic message that everybody's going to respond to exactly in the same way. That's not how people work. But what you can do is identify different messaging that appeals to different targets, different audiences, such as it could be as I actually, Mike, I use this example all the time. It was not your organization, but when I lived in Chicago, I would get appeals from a place where we did adopt a cat. And I would always be vaguely annoyed that they never referenced the fact that we adopted from them. Mm-hmm. And it influenced the fact that I'm like, do I want to give to you? Like, you're not even, how hard is it to put in your donor database, adopted equals yes?
Yes, yeah, that's so important. That's such an important piece to point out, because, I mean, like you said, like if you're not recognized as so, then like what's the point of me supporting your organization? So I think there needs to be an establishment there for sure. And that brings me to another important topic, which is messaging and how important that is. And I think that there is a lot of nonprofits can have inconsistent messaging that doesn't match the brand in its entirety. And that's mainly because there is like a discrepancy in a silo between fundraising and marketing. And I think there needs to be better a communication stream behind it. So, Mike, my question is, what can nonprofits do to ensure that messaging remains consistent and on brand, so donors can recognize, the voice?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's incredibly important. And unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of meetings, but this is one of those times where you're going to have to talk about it. Now, what we try to do at HSUS is have these campaign meetings where we can talk about, what's going on in the week, what we're going to message about with all of the channel heads in the room, and then people are going to slice and dice the copy. We'll have a single source come up with, the talking points, or write, like, for example, we could write our email copy around, something going out. And then we then disseminate it to all of the other channel heads to then take and put it into their own style that fits the channel. Clearly, you can't put email length, copy into a tweet or on Instagram or Facebook. Yeah. You definitely don't want to take, email copy and put it in direct mail. But what we start with a single point of copy, so people know these are the points that we need to make. And then we have the channel experts. We lean on those channel experts to make it the right tone, the right frequency, the right cadence for their own channels. And what we find is, even when the data is not amazing and clean, and we don't know that, this one single person is a direct mail responsive and gets email and, looks at our YouTube channel and maybe, responds to a tweet. Even when that data is not super clean, which, just a little bit of a secret, probably, 80% of all of my clients have never had that clean data. Even when that data is not super clean, you're still telling the same story. So if they happen to get all of these, touch points, they feel very much the same. There's nothing worse than trying to tell a single story, on these digital channels, and like a direct mail, capital campaign rolls through. I've had clients where that's happened, where they're not even telling even close to the same story. And poor donor care, the ones on the other end of that 1-800 number get that earful of, what are you doing? What are you asking me to do? And it all comes back for us is meet, talk about it, and work off a single playbook.
Yeah, that's great. Tim, did you have anything to add?
I think that if there's any vendor out there, for instance, that says that they can provide the most holistic multi-channel strategy that will nail down to 100% what exactly every single person has ever done, that person is lying.
Yeah. But it's that 360-degree view of your donor,
Yeah.
How many times have I heard that in a PowerPoint that I filed?
Since I'll be, and full disclosure, I stopped using that phrase because it's just not true in the reality of how all this technology fits together. We need to think about things in a more integrated way. We'll talk about technology maybe later, but when it comes to brand, though, same idea applies. And I love everything, Mike, that you put down from a process standpoint, because I think that if you start with that central why not only for your organization, but why for this campaign, then everybody can then lean into their expertise. Love that. So ultimately, I think it does come down to just making sure that everybody's on the same page when it comes to how things should be communicated, and then also ensuring that that's extending down to all stakeholders. Having meetings with other departments who maybe are not outright in the marketing or the development offices, like the volunteer team, the program team. They might give insights to what you're about to put out to then say, that actually doesn't track for on the ground reality. Like, people are not going to actually jive with that because that's not what we're experiencing. So don't ivory tower your copy as well. I think one of the best things that I always hear is, kill your darlings, right? So be prepared to go out when it comes to the things that you hold close and dear, and cut to just get to the core essence of why you exist, and then go from there.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so next I want to talk about something exciting. As we know, Giving Tuesday now is happening on May 5th in light of the COVID stuff. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about it. Mike, I know HSUS is planning on participating in it. Can you tell us how you guys have prepared for it, how you've messaged it to have donors more aware of this date coming up?
Sure, absolutely. And I think maybe like a lot of other nonprofits, we have a meeting, someone mentions this Giving Tuesday now, and the whole room goes, wait, what? Giving Tuesday? It's supposed to be, so clearly it was a little bit of a shock at first. And especially, we were already building out our COVID messaging, right? We have a program called Pets for Life, which it takes people who are in poverty, who are in need and can't quite care for their pets. We kind of bridge that gap between, service providers and the people who need that help. So we'll help, with food. We'll actually, physically drop food off of people's houses. We'll help people with veterinary care, because we know that a lot of times people in a situation of poverty or maybe this frequent round of job loss, they look at their pet as really their saving grace. That's the person that they rely on, and they rely on each other. So Pets for Life really helps keep those animals in the homes, because how more awful could it be that you've lost your job, you're in this state of poverty, and now you have to give up your only hope. So we were already talking about how are we messaging about this, and how does it intersect with the COVID messaging now. And with the Giving Tuesday now, we already had the plan built out, so we thought, well, let's shift a little bit and fall back on what I was talking about before, is what's our value prop in this. Giving Tuesday now, much like Giving Tuesday, is going to be a whole bunch of nonprofits telling their stories. And there's a lot of noise, not to saying that other nonprofits are not important, but there's a lot of noise out there. So we need to figure out what can we do to cut through that noise. We're not cutting through the noise with gimmicks. We're not cutting through the noise with some new, shiny, nonsensical thing. We're cutting through the noise with, we're all in this together. COVID-19 has affected people in ways that they couldn't even imagine, but this is how we're helping directly. And we're telling the stories. We're showing the pictures of the people. Here, you get an email, you get a message it's all going to be coordinated with each other on all of our channels. This is the woman that you're looking at holding her dog. We're helping this woman. We're helping keep this dog in her arms. And, that's what we're doing, is just falling back on what we do best, and putting our story out there in the most respectful way possible that we can.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And Tim, I know you have, I know Neon One, first of all, is like a technology that is offering their service for Giving Tuesday now. Can you talk more about, your pointers for nonprofits?
Yeah, it's important to remember that Giving Tuesday and Giving Tuesday Now are more conceptual as opposed to a thing that you have to sign up for. You are part of Giving Tuesday and Giving Tuesday Now if you say you are. It's that simple. So building messaging such as doing what Mike did, which is slightly changing the day of when they're rolling out something that was already being planned, is a perfect example of how to leverage the huge megaphone and the social conversation that will be happening during that time. So one of the things that I can point out on a more kind of higher level that we're seeing at Neon One is we do a lot of giving days. So giving events that are run for communities. And so what was really fascinating is that same situation kind of happened where Communities of Texas Foundation, which, we've been running their giving day for years, and it's actually the largest individual giving day in the world, $50 million in one day last year, right? But they do it in September. They don't do it on Giving Tuesday. And then there's the United Way of Dallas, which does do their giving day on Giving Tuesday historically. They're teaming up for Giving Tuesday now because Communities of Texas Foundation already was kind of having a conversation and saying, let's do something. But then when they heard that the day was going to roll out, they said, you know what, let's team up. And they've thrown the Dallas Cowboys into the mix too. So for that area, that's just larger institutional partners deciding, hey, let's go in and just be efficient together on this. Now, individual nonprofits, though, I think the simple pointer there is you don't have to also leverage, and Giving Tuesday will tell you this outright. They will tell you this till the cows come home. It doesn't have to be about asking. You can use the day to thank people as well. You can use the day to say, you know what, this has been a tough time. Here are some resources on how to get through it together, such as the animals bringing comfort for people who are just alone at home, right, Mike? That's such a beautiful articulation of that, your mission, right? And it's very easy to use that as, if you feel pressure around not wanting to do an appeal on that day, that's okay. That's okay. There's 364 days in a year. Giving doesn't happen on one day. Yeah. But we have seen some we have seen some very encouraging data in regards to focus giving days. What's happening is that, for instance, Arizona Gives, we just had that earlier in April, and they've seen a massive amount of increase in their online giving. They basically were under 4 million last year. They ended, under 5 million, 4.7, I believe, million this year for one day. And a lot of the other days are actually opening up their giving early. So if they're like a later May day, they're actually using Giving Tuesday now as like a kickoff for their campaign and doing early giving. And early giving is really increasing. So especially if you're a smaller nonprofit that feels like you're going to get lost in the kind of the rush of conversations, joining a giving day in your community is a really good way to help kind of be part of the tide, because even a lot of those platforms, if you're on the platform and they have like a COVID relief fund, which is what Arizona did, they're actually dispersing the money to anybody that joined the platform evenly. So you might not actually work out on the giving day, but you might get something because your community host actually did something. So that's a little strategy for any sized organization.
I think there's a good point around that, the focused giving days. If you don't do anything the other 364 days of the year and talk to your people and talk to your file, that one focused giving day is not going to be that magic, buckets of money going to roll in. I think we look at these as parts of, just a part of our normal strategy where we talk to people all year long. Like Tim was saying, we don't ask them all the time. That would be, silly. People just would stop opening our emails, right? So we give back a lot and we tell stories. We tell really good stories. We'd say, this is what you did. This is how you enabled these awesome things, these great smiles. We show pictures of, happy animals, happy owners. This is what you enabled. But it's these singular giving days. If everyone is thinking, it's Giving Tuesday or it's Giving Tuesday now, let's do this, without the rest of the year of talking, there's not going to be, it's no magic bullet there.
you're going to be very disappointed in the results in that way.
Yeah.
Engagement is a year-round thing. This is why I have such a focus on donor retention, because there's so many touch points that you can be making in a meaningful way with people that have nothing to do with giving. And if you're not telling that story on why you exist, then you're treating people in a transactional way. And this is where I get a little concerned about a pure digital focus. And Mike, I would think that you would agree with me here in terms of, if people focus only on digital fundraising tools, then they're missing out on digital communication tools, as well as other communication touch points that you can make with your donors at any time of the year.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, and that's such a key point. I've mentioned this many times on NonProfit Pro, saying Giving Tuesday is great and giving days are great, but just because you're participating it's not a way for your nonprofit just to get free money with no effort put in. There needs to be some kind of strategy, donor engagement strategy going in. You need to communicate with your donors all the time, not just before you want them to give and after as a thank you, but it needs to be consistent. They need to hear from your organization on a very frequent basis in order for this to work. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is, some interesting technology offerings out there. And there's a lot that's happening, especially now in light of COVID-19, and nonprofits need to be creative with technology. So Mike, can you share some interesting things that HSUS has been doing?
You bet. I could talk about this piece for hours, but I won't. I'll make this brief as I can for everyone. Some of the most exciting things that we are involved with now is live stream fundraising. So we normally live stream fundraising. It started off, generally on the Twitch platform where people were playing games, and you could give the person playing the game, you can give them tips, like monetary tips, So those gamers quickly realized, and it's really, strangely enough, these people streaming their games are really a bunch of folks who want to give back. So they realized very quickly that, wait a minute, I don't need tips all the time. I can donate my time to a nonprofit and have fundraisers. So it turned from people just playing games and streaming them, getting their tips, to fundraisers. And it really, really took off. So we jumped into the fray about a year ago now, after a kickoff we had at TwitchCon in California last year, and start our own live stream fundraising program. And we went in absolutely blind. You did, talk about these new, fun, shiny technologies. We didn't know the technology. So what we did is we relied heavily on strategy of what we do as an organization and how we do it well. We had a booth at TwitchCon. Our whole pitch at TwitchCon was, we're the HSUS. We do animal welfare amazing. Look at these photos. These are the animals that we're saving. Here's a picture of, like a dog meat farm. This dog was going to be food, and now it's not, thanks to, the things that we know. We want to help, we need you to help us in live stream fundraising. How do you think you could help? And people, hand over fist, were saying, absolutely, I want to help you. Because, we relied on those experts. The experts are the streamers in this case. So we said, awesome, we'll provide all of the HSUS stuff that you need. We'll talk about how we do the things and how people engaging with you can help us. It's really big, especially with live stream fundraising. They're really big on impact points. Yeah. So, if I give $5, what will it do? Because these streamers come with these built-in audiences, right? Some have very small audiences, some have amazingly huge audiences. But what they're going to do is, like the old school kind of Jerry Lewis telethon kind of a thing, where they're going to talk about the organization. They're going to say, we need you to help do X, build a thing, do a whatever. But they want very specific impact points. So they can say, every $5 you give is going to help this thing. This generation of givers who are responsive through live stream fundraising, it's a generation like no other. Remember, this is the kind of, I need it now, instant gratification. They're expecting this transparency in where their dollar is going. Which is key to this whole live stream fundraising. And we found pretty good success in it, and we're getting bigger and bigger. So much so we started a whole other department at work now just to handle live stream fundraising and the opportunities. And we're actually even coming up, we're doing a live stream concert. I can share those details later, but so exciting. We're using this technology, which is neat. We're using strategies which are set in stone, and we're not set in stone, but something we've used for years and years to really do a lot of good work. But we have people approaching us now to stream for us online. So that's the most exciting piece that we're dealing with these days at the HSUS.
Oh, that's awesome. And like, I've talked about this so many times on NonProfit Pro that the audience is probably so sick of me talking about live stream fundraising, but I think it's just amazing. And it's been around for a long time. I mentioned this before, and it's gonna bring out the geek in me, but I used to be obsessed with gaming when I was a kid because I grew up with my brother and I grew up with my cousins, and we all played video games. So I followed a lot of gamers and watched them like religiously. So they're following these gamers, these influencers on YouTube. They have very loyal followers, and they take what these people say very seriously. And if they support an organization, then they're gonna do what they can to support that influencer. So I mean, there's just so much potential with this, and it goes beyond gaming. Like you said, you can do a concert with it. I know people do some cooking shows.
We have and art's really big too. We have got a couple of people who stream for us that they're drawing these rescued animals. I mean, what better tie-in between our core mission and this new technology than someone drawing, like a dog meat dog, something that was made to be eaten that we've rescued as HSUS, thanks to the help of our supporters who gave us the funds to do it. Now is another fundraising opportunity with someone drawing it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. Yeah, super cool stuff. I mean, seems like you guys are doing very well. If you're having like influencers reach out to you to be a part of it, that's huge. So Tim, let's talk about your thoughts on some interesting technology.
I mean, I am a big fan of live stream fundraising, and Mike, I was at TwitchCon last year.
That's great.
It completely fried my brain being there, but I greatly enjoyed it, and well, it was great to get insight, because I think a lot of people misunderstand that community, and misunderstand the application of it. They always immediately think it's gaming, and then two, the reality is that it's not like, you have to build a relationship with people. It's just like how you do peer-to-peer fundraising in the traditional thing. You don't have top tier, marathoners who are just like gonna do running for you automatically because you're just there, right? You have to build a relationship with them. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, I will go a little bit of a parallel approach here in terms of the technology trends that I'm looking at. Because for me, at my role at my company, I need to look at every facet of every way that nonprofit organizations organize their day-to-day work. And it's not just individual donations, there's elements of grants. And then even in the individual donations, there's elements of, is it a donor advice fund versus a live stream fundraising campaign versus a direct mail appeal? And for me, the most important things that I think we're going to see, and the most interesting work that I'm seeing, is still touching on the core points that both of you brought up when it came to live stream fundraising and what those people want, which is they want it fast and they want to know the impact. Mm-hmm. Guess what? Old money wants to know that now too. And so where we need to start shifting as an industry, and there's a lot of things happening here, is immediate impact and understanding that. And I think the more revolutionary things that we can do in the industry are addressing even those older money elements, such as checks, such as donor advised funds, such as grant dispersals, and the fact that all of that stuff is still going through the mail. It's still going through the mail. It might lack detailed donor data, and where I'm seeing some interesting discussions is how to digitize that in a way that still showcases impact. It's not as simple as like, cool, like get an EFT transfer. You also need the impact data along with it for that feedback loop. And there's things happening in the grant and foundation space. I actually did we're doing a virtual conference for Giving Day hosts, and I interviewed Corinne Mitchell of Flux, the grant making platform, who powers like Ford Foundation and stuff like that. And she was talking about what Chicago Community Trust has been doing, is that they have all their grant seekers, all these hundreds of nonprofits, going into and putting in impact reports. It's almost like a Twitch stream in a way of what they're doing around coronavirus, but it's through a grant platform. And so there's like set data and set structures that the foundation has set in order for them to collect the proper data on what they're reporting, but they're doing it in a way that actually speaks more to what a Twitch stream is like. And so I think we're going to see this interesting melding of old school and new school kind of ways of telling a story. So that's kind of some of the interesting stuff that I've seen. I'm a little obsessed with like bridging the gap between those things too.
Super cool stuff. All right. So I always end my podcast with one question, and I know this episode has gone a little long, but it's been great conversation. What's one piece of advice you would give nonprofits today, Mike?
I was like, someone will answer it, I'm sure. No, I think the biggest piece of advice, based on the fact that we know there's thousands upon thousands of nonprofits, everyone doing their thing, is look at what your value proposition is. If you started the nonprofit, think about why you started. What was the gap that you were trying to fill? If you just work for a nonprofit, figure that out. What is the gap that you're filling? What do you offer that's better, different, more impactful than others? And focus on that. Even when we race into new shiny technologies like live stream fundraising or whatever the next crazy thing is going to come out, fall back on what do you do better than everyone else and tell your story. And with that, you can bridge, online, offline, new stuff, old stuff. It doesn't matter, because you're telling people, when you ask for $1, they're going to say why. You need to be able to answer why you need that dollar and how you can bring that donor along with you on your journey.
Yeah, being able to answer that why is so important. So that's really great advice. And Tim?
I would say, besides the fact that Mike stole mine, and I always do kind of drumbeat around what's your why, but I think the other piece to go with that that I know Mike would agree with as well is embrace empathy and authenticity.
Yeah,
more than ever. It's empathy of your coworkers, it's empathy of your donors, it's empathy of your program folks, your volunteers. We just need to be more understanding of each other now more than ever. I think especially in the United States, we've created such a culture of individualism that the idea of the collective is like, ugh, right? Like, oh, is that socialism? Like, no, that's not. It's community's always been important. It's just the fact that we've tried to forge it through this lens of, but it's about me. And it's like, yes, you are important, but mutual aid is much more important in terms of building a larger society, a larger kind of connectivity that will also help you as an individual. We are wired for empathy. We are wired for giving as humans. That is baked into our DNA. It's not actually going off in the wild and fending for ourselves. Those animals died. And so what happened is that the people who banded together, the animals and groups as we evolved, it was because they cared for each other. And that's what's going to get us through this. And that's where we're going to need to go.
Awesome. I love that. So that about wraps it up for today's episode. I want to thank our listeners for listening in on today's podcast. And Mike and Tim, it's been so fun and an absolute pleasure having you both on. And thank you once again for joining me on the Nonprofit Voice and sharing your insights and expertise on strategy and technology. And so on behalf of Nonprofit Pro, we will see you on the next episode of the Nonprofit Voice. Have a great day.